you'd allow me to stand. I stand for two reasons. I stand first to honor the many women and girls in the world who at this moment are struggling to just have a school. Who at this moment know that it has not been possible. Who at this moment are selling things by the roadside so that they can raise school fees. Who at this moment are unable to cross from one side of the river to the other because their country is landmined, because there is high levels of insecurity, because it's just not possible. I stand in honor of my own mother. The day she wrote her name, Rosaria, she came home dancing. She was happy, but she was an old woman. If she had been able to write Rosaria when she was a little girl, her world would have been different. But at least she opened her own bank account before she passed on. At least she managed to get and sign on her passport other than a thumbprint. At least she was able to be the treasurer of the local school because now she could sign the bank account. I stand here in celebration of education and what it means. But I'm also in real celebration of this day because when I was growing up in my little village in Zimbabwe, I wanted to know where the bus comes from. I really wanted to know where the bus comes from because the bus would come every day. And I was in this village going to school. And I wanted to know the world. I now know where the bus comes from. The bus comes from your heart. That is what determines destination. The drive, the push, the zeal to know more, to look for the possible, and to say another world is possible. I never knew growing up in rural Zimbabwe. Until I was 17 years, I'd never been to town. I didn't know that today I would stand in this place. I would lead a global movement of the YWCA with 25 million women and girls, that I would stand and be counted as a leader with women and girls in 125 countries. I didn't know that I would be on the board of trustees of Save the Children UK. I didn't know that I would be among the many leaders of the world because the girl from the village. It's a label we need to remove because a girl from that village is a leader, a citizen, like any other person. So when I was invited and took the morning flight from Geneva, I said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm standing here also to respect you, to say thank you so much. You had a choice today whether to be here or to be somewhere else, but you chose to be here. For me, I stand here respecting you, valuing education, valuing investment in a possibility for a people, but a possibility for our nations. I also stand here because I'm celebrating the 100 years of striving for gender equality, for women's empowerment, for a place at the table. And also celebrating that we now have our UN agency for women. And yes, I celebrate that moment when Zimbabwe was still in the Commonwealth. And we had the Commonwealth meeting about human rights in my own country. and so this afternoon I want to leave us with what social transformation are we talking about? Because our theme is educating women for social transformation and for change. So I want to share with you what that change means from my life, my YWCA, and my experience. The first transformation is changing social norms in a way that affirms possibilities within communities, but changing the social norms that continue to put women on the margins of society. So education for me is about changing those social norms, relating to our culture, relating to our faith, to say, hey, there were more than 12 apostles. There were women first before we had the 12 apostles. So the norms are not only the cultural norms, but also within our own faith. The second norm, the second change that we're looking at is the feminization of poverty. With education, we want to address the feminization of poverty, but at the same time to address poverty itself. Women want income, decent work, employment. Women are innovators, and with education, women can be much more innovators than who we are now, but also education unleashes our own knowledge, our own experience. That, for me, is part of the social change and the social transformation that we are looking at. The third aspect of the social change that we're talking about in transforming societies, it's unacceptable for women to die due to preventable diseases. And when we have a little bit of education, when we can read that prescription a little bit, when that grandmother can know what to read about the ARV prescription to the little kids, when she needs to know about her own health, when she goes for maternal care, about immunization, that transformation about protecting unnecessary deaths, which we can achieve through investment in women's education. Human rights and peace with justice. With education, for me, the greatest security that a nation has is an educated community. When our boys and girls have access to education, to income, they don't need to hold guns and look for, they cannot be manipulated because they have options. We need education to be a prevention aspect of crisis, and for women to be at the negotiations and to be at the highest level of diplomacy. For us to be in those spaces of diplomacy, we need to know the sophistication, and it comes with education, access to opportunities, and for us, and for me, that is highly important. And lastly, the greatest social transformation that I'm looking at is when our education budget is much higher than our defense budget. And reset priorities with clarity, and reset the priorities of the multilateral financial institutions. And this afternoon, I affirm the call which has been raised, the demands of the Global Coalition on Education, that education is a human right, that education is a state responsibility. Us in civil society are only supporting where there are gaps, but it's a state primary responsibility to provide education. That education has to be provided in our core budget, in the fiscus. That's why we are paying the taxes. And that education is a responsibility of communities, of teachers, and that even the students are not beneficiaries of education and objects of education, but they are stakeholders in their own education. Thank you so much for inviting me. And